I have the privilege and honor of introducing, and he said I can call him his friend, so that means something. The wonderful, amazing Jason Lavigne. Yeah, come on. And if you're not watching his show, you need to get watching it right away. He has decades of business, legal experience. Besides the thing that he's known for the most, the Lavigne show, the fact that he covered that trial in Lethbridge, right? Yeah, like astounding. Every day. I like to show up for things, but honestly, I could not have done that. I'll be honest with you. So thank you for being so consistent and giving people courage. And the other thing that he's very well known for and is the shot. The Sean Hartman story. And for anybody that isn't quite knowing his story, you need to get on YouTube and check it out. And you also need to check out what the government is saying about this. In 2024, the government released a report. It's online right now. You can go see it yourself. If you can't find it, I'll help you. 58,000 injuries, almost 7,000 critical injuries and deaths. Some of those are in my family. And 96 spontaneous abortions. That's right on the government website for everyone to read. And they shut it down tracking 2 years ago. If it was safe and effective, why would they have shut it down 2 years ago? Well, most of us know the reason why. So I thank you for being here, all you guys. And please, let's give a warm welcome for Jason Lavigne.
Do you know, guys, that we have 200 people watching online right now?
Sounds like the voice of God. Where are you, Max? Oh, he's back there. Okay. That was kind of weird. Well, everybody, welcome to the Whistle Stop Mosquito Blood Drive. You're all doing your part. They feel like liberals just blood sucking, don't they? I did notice that there was no land acknowledgement. So follow me in one. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm standing on the permanently ceded land of Treaty 6 in the town of Mere, currently the province of Alberta, and the future nation of Alberta. So my name is Jason Lavigne. I'm the host of The Lavigne Show, father of two, husband of one. Sorry, Adam, I'm going to try and keep it that way. I don't want to remember other birthdays. And what I like to do is kind of sit down and have conversation with people, do a lot of listening. The great philosopher of our time, Judge Judy, said, "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason." And I took that to heart, because listening is how we actually learn. Several years ago, was I was sitting in my fifth wheel. We were planning to kind of semi-retire. We moved out, we escaped from Ontario in 2021. And I actually say that because when you left and crossed the border to Manitoba, it was open. But coming in, there was a checkpoint. You had to prove your business, prove your reason for coming into Ontario. That's what it was like in 2021 of May. So we came out to Alberta, and the very first thing we noticed was no masks. People were in the parks. God bless you all. And one of the first person, for sure, one of the first person we spoke to, we said, "We've noticed you guys aren't wearing masks out here." And her answer was, "We believe in God, and God's got our shield for us. So we don't need that kind of crap." I knew I was home at that moment. Now, just like Adam, I wasn't born in Alberta. I was actually born in northern Manitoba, like right on the border to the Northwest Territories. And yeah, that town doesn't exist anymore. It was an old mining town. But I always knew I belonged in the West. I spent a lot of time growing up in Winnipeg and Saskatoon, learning some things, being a young man, getting into trouble, yes. But then I went out east, kind of chasing my computer ambitions, a software guy. And I'm wondering, did I make the right choice? It's a very different lifestyle. Anybody here spend time in Ontario, like the GTA area? Yeah. You know it's different. Because when I would walk the streets in Winnipeg or Saskatoon, you would say hi to people when you pass. And they would acknowledge and say hello back. But the first time I did that in the Toronto area, I was scowled. Like someone scowled at me. Like, how dare you talk to me? Like, we're in different territory for sure. But in 2021, I packed up my family, pulled a little trailer behind our vehicle, and made the move because we were done. And what was the straw that broke the camel's back? We ran out of propane for our barbecue. So I went down the road to our local gas station to get some more barbecue propane. And Doug Ford sent a message to my phone. I didn't install anything. I didn't click yes, I accept on anything. I didn't put my phone number into a website that says keep me informed. Just a text message that said, you're in a lockdown. You need to be back home. And I'm like, whoa. As a tech guy, I'm like, whoa. Yeah, you're using the towers to triangulate and know where I am. You put me in a bubble and I left the bubble. And then you reached out and reminded me that there's a fine for leaving. Even though that was a legitimate reason, you were allowed to get food and fuel. He didn't know that part. All he knew is I left the bubble. So we made the move to leave the bubble permanently and come out here to Alberta. I never planned on being a journalist. I'm a nerd. I grew up on the VIC-20. You guys remember that one? Programming Basic, working with the Apple IIe. I know there's a couple people going, oh yeah, I remember that. PC load 8. Get the tape moving. Those are the good old days. I know you. And hey, Tanya, good to see you. Just on the phone with her. There's something big coming. Stay tuned for that one. But as a computer guy, I've been working with the ones and the zeros. You know, things make sense. You create these little programs. They get things done. They execute. When there's a problem, we call it a bug. We find a bug. We squish it and move on. A very linear world, very logical world, very rational world. That's what I was in until the convoy. I was watching the convoy from our fifth wheel, going right on. I'm not alone. There's people that think the same way I do. They want to stand up and ask questions. And I was naive enough at that time to think all they're going to do is drive to Ottawa, the Prime Minister will sit down, answer some questions, explain what's going on, and then they'll come back. How is that working for you? That's right. But then as time was going on, I'm like, wait a minute, they're not talking. Why not? These are Canadians. And then we saw what Trudeau was actually saying. The chauvinists and racists and all the other ists and phobia and all that kind of stuff. But then I was watching the streamers walking around. Nobody expected that. Viva Fry, Travel 69, several others. And watching what was actually going on. And then seeing what the media was reporting. Very different. I'm like, oh no. I'm starting to wake up here. Something's really wrong with this. The more I paid attention to it, the more I woke up. And then at one point I turned to the wife. We had enough saved up because we sold everything, came out here. We had enough saved up to put up a house, a little house, and make sure that we could take care of our family and our homestead, do some homeschooling. But I looked at her in our fifth wheel and said, look, I'm concerned. She's like, what's up? I'm like, well, this overreach. They're going after everybody, making excuses, destroying families, taking away children. And I'm afraid it's going to come here. If you've met our little one, Jacob, you know he's a ball of joy, full of love. And he's got Down syndrome. He was born that way. I do want to let you know Ontario did not want him to be born. They pulled us into a room, said we did a test. This is a result of that test. And we think you guys will be better off if he's not with you. And sadly, they also told us the gender too. So your young son. And we said, no, we're not doing that. So we kind of pushed the system away and said, forget that, we're going to give birth. By far the best decision ever. But we also homeschool. So what I figured is if we're homeschooling a young child with Down syndrome, here's how they're going to do it. They're going to come and say, you're not certified for his needs. You don't understand how to educate a child with special needs. So we're going to take your child and put him into a program. And we would say, no way. And then they would say, you're a bad parent. You're neglecting your child. We're going to take the other one too. Like, no way. And that's a hill I definitely would die on. So I figured by the time they get to our gate, it would be too late. So we'd have to get involved and do something. That's when I turned to Paula and I said, we got to do something. Viva Fry just moved from Montreal down to Florida, and I really enjoyed his work online. I have a bit of a legal background from Ontario. Don't hold it against me. And I thought, well, let's follow the Public Order Emergency Commission. And just like the coot stuff I ended up doing, I followed it every single day. I was up 12 hours a day covering that Public Order Emergency Commission. And I was dumbfounded at some of the testimony I heard from there. Not from the citizens of Canada, but from people that would be called the authorities, the officials, the law enforcement. They kept repeating the narrative from the media, all except for the OPP. If you listen to the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, they actually had people embedded in there, and they were reporting like every couple of days, these reports. And they were very accurate. These are nonviolent, very, very careful drivers. They're not even causing problems there. They're peaceful people. And then the commissioner of the OPPs took the stand and completely followed the false narrative. Oh my gosh, they got to him. Because even his officers, his constables, his sergeants had a very different story. Like, oh no, this is bad. We got to pay a lot more attention to this. Now, sadly, it was just Viva Fry, myself, and War Campaign that was covering this event. But nobody else was. No other media was covering it. So that's kind of what we started the Lavigne show. And then I made a commitment to myself. We're going to interview every single person in the POEC. That includes Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. So we started to do that. Started to reach out to some of the people. Tom Marazzo, Chris Barber. Tamara's around too, and she testified. And started to do a bunch of interviews. And we started to learn more of the details, more of the information, and sharing that out there. And then one day there was this, in camera, which means behind closed doors, portion of the POEC about Coutts, Alberta. Like, why are they not providing us the testimony from that one? The RCMP officers from Coutts, some of the people from the town maybe the mayor, start talking to us. But a lot of it was in camera. So I put out a message online. I said, hey, I'm looking to speak to the people from Coutts. And then I got a whole bunch of messages. And that changed my life. Because at that time, very few people knew that they were still in remand. Pre-trial, no bail. This is Canada. You can be shooting across the 401 highway in Toronto and you're out by noon. Like everybody gets bail. But these guys didn't. So started digging into that, interviewing the men themselves offline because they couldn't get online, talking to the family, talking to some more people involved, eventually kind of talked to everybody. And I realized they targeted these men for the purpose of narrative in order to scare Canada to support their invocation of the Emergencies Act. And I'll stand here today and say that's exactly what happened. They saw a hunting trailer, ran the plates, pulled up some pals, and said, well, this is Southern Alberta. Surely they're going to have a gun or two. And that's what ended up happening. And for that, they were in remand for over 1,000 days, 1,500 for a couple of them. Covered every day of the trial. The only person there more than I was the judge himself, because there was even days where the jury wasn't there. And I was just broken by the time we got to the end of this. Now, the jury didn't do a great decision, but at least they took away the conspiracy to commit murder of a police officer, because they weren't there for that. They were there to fight for the future of their children. But I was broken because I saw decisions made by the judge that was unfair. I saw the prosecutor go out of his way to vilify innocent people. And one of the days just shocked me. They wanted to prove that these guys were terrorists, and they were talking in code amongst themselves. And the code, the RCMP said, was guitars means guns, ammunition, amplifiers means ammunition. So when they say guitars and amplifiers, they mean guns and ammunition. And then they actually brought forward this chat. Hey, let's get Lindsay Butler here. Tell her to bring her guitars and amplifiers. And the prosecution wanted the jury to believe that that meant guns and ammunition. The defense had to call Lindsay Butler to the stand. She's a country music singer. She played on the stage down in Milk River, then Coos. That's where we were at. The prosecution didn't have to prove that this is what it meant. The defense had to prove it's not what it meant. How many people here actually believe that we're innocent until proven guilty? Not in Canada. You're correct. You're guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And that's why they were in remand, because they couldn't prove themselves innocent. If you listen to the bail hearings and go through the testimony and the transcripts, the prosecution literally said, we need to keep these men in jail because if the police go and check up on them, they will shoot them through the door. We cannot have police officers shot. None of these men had any violent history, ever. There was no proof that they would do anything like that. But because the defense couldn't prove they wouldn't, they had to sit in remand. So the system's completely broken. Now the federal election is when I learned it's done. Canada's done. Put a fork in it. Because that particular election is, no matter how hard I tried, I ran in my local riding, and no matter how hard I tried, people are only going to vote for two parties. That's it. I got your vote. Love you, brother. We needed about 50,000 more of you to get the job done. But after that election, you saw both the Conservatives and the Liberals held more power and more support than before. All third parties tanked, and there was no way to fix it. The ballot boxes here in Alberta closed at 8 p.m. The election was called at 8:06 or 8:08. So even if you voted for the Liberals, they didn't need your vote. That's how little your vote means out here. So that night, it was bittersweet. The bitter was, I didn't win. But the sweet was, I knew where we were headed after that. The first call I got was Jeff Rath. He called me and read his letter to Alberta that he drafted. He provided that on April 29th, the day after the election. I said, that's wonderful. All except for the word Commonwealth. Maybe you want to change that word. And he said, it's my word. I'm going to do what I want. I'm like, all right, Jeff. If you know Jeff, that's about the extent of the conversation. But it was a fantastic open letter to Alberta, which basically said, we're done. We have to do something completely different. The next conversation was Mitch Sylvester. He couldn't be happier. 4,000 new members an hour joining the APP right after the election was called. 4,000 an hour. They were worried about the website crashing. But he couldn't be happier because now's the time. Alberta has woken up. And the last conversation was Premier Danielle Smith. And she said, watch tomorrow's press conference. We already had a hint of what was coming, but that was a press conference where she lowered the limit from 20 to 10 for the Citizens Initiative Act, removed electronic voting, and made sure that there was going to be ID when we do this next time around. So I went to bed actually pleased. I think Alberta is now heading in the right direction. And from that moment on, I made a commitment. There is no fixing Canada. There's only saving Alberta. Now, I'll tell you, as a show that has a lot of supporters from across Canada at that point, there was an economic hit. There's a lot of people that waved the Canadian flag that were following us that said, no, 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 no. Don't break up the country. We can still win this. And I said, I don't think you understand. We're not breaking up the country. We're birthing a nation. That's very different. So just like an expecting mother, it's scary especially your first time. What's going to happen? Is it going to hurt? Is it going to turn out great? But you don't go ahead and have a child. Who are parents in here? Any parents in this room? Yeah. By the way, that's a common thing amongst everybody fighting for a new Alberta. They're also parents. But nobody has a child saying, I know what's going to happen. They're going to become an engineer. They're going to become an architect. God forbid they become a liberal. But you still go ahead without knowing exactly how it's going to turn out, because what you do know is it's exciting and it's going to be a great opportunity to come and guide a new life into this world, leave something behind bigger than you, and make sure that whatever it is that you do with your life, you're able to pass something on. So just like birthing a new nation, there's going to be some trauma for the mother and the child. There may be some screaming and kicking and blood, not figuratively, or figuratively, but not literal. But it's going to be exciting to actually do. So when we talk about separating from Canada, I don't like to look at it as a divorce. I like to look at it as a birth of a new nation, because that's the exciting part. Now we're going around, you got a whole bunch of third-party advertisers out there now. Big round for Corey Morgan, Keith Wilson, Kathy Flett, Tanya Clemmings, Angela Tabak, John, wherever John is, I think he might be here too. Because what we're doing is we're volunteering our time, getting out there to reach out to people who don't come to these events. Because who's going to actually decide this referendum? The undecided are going to decide. If you look at the numbers, the fair numbers, not the mainstream ones, it's about 42 and 45. So it's going to be the undecided that tips the scale. So I was talking to Kathy on my way up here, and she broke some great news. She converted someone. And I said, was that an undecided or a never leave? And she goes, a never leave. Like, ooh, that's worth 2. 1 less for them, 1 for us. Great job. How'd you do it? Well, she got dragged to the event by her friends. And then when she actually saw how Canada's structured, especially when it comes to the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the House of Commons, she understood there is no fixing this. How many people watched the Keith Wilson and Jason Kenney debate? Sorry for swearing, Jason Kenney. Yeah. They actually both agree. Watch the whole thing closely. They both say Alberta's treated unfairly. Alberta's been trying to get new deals. Alberta's being held back. Alberta could do much better. Both of them said that. The only place they differ is the solution. Jason Kenney says, put your elbow to the wheel, or put your shoulder to the wheel, keep fighting. And Keith Wilson says it's time to do something different. I believe Keith Wilson's correct. So I absolutely love looking out here. If you watch the weather forecast throughout the week before here, it said it was going to be pouring on us by now. I think God approves of this. Now, something special happened. I'm not sure how many of you have seen the Sean Hartman story yet, but it's available online. You can go rent it there and check it out. But I got compelled to do that. I didn't go to Ontario for that purpose. I went to Ontario to interview people about Alberta independence, self-determination. And I'll tell you that God is playing a part, and I'll share you 2 pieces to prove that. Because miracles have to be witnessed. I went to Sean's grave to film, to be part of the documentary, and all the way there pouring, just pouring, and thunder, and just horrible. Wipers on full, barely can see anything. But as we pull up to the cemetery, cleared, just stopped. Now, if you watch the documentary, you'll see the shots of the cemetery. It's wet, because that's what was happening. And then when we put the lens cap back on and packed up to leave, pouring. So we got to pause in the weather. I don't think that was by accident. God's there. God's good. When I recorded with Dan, and I got it all back, and I was starting to work with Dean Rainey, who helped me edit things, he sends me a message. He's like, Jason, Dan's audio is missing. Like, what? No. I open up the file, and sure enough, his audio track is empty. I'm like, no. What? How did I do that? I'm not perfect. I learned that for sure. But then I remembered my audio track. You can hear me, but faintly in the background, you can hear Dan. Like, okay, well, let's see what we can do with this. Put it into some software, bada boom, bada bing, turn a knob or two, crystal clear Dan. The whole audio's there. So when you actually watch the documentary, God fixed his audio for us. You would never know. Now, the last piece of this story is Sean Buckley and Teresa Buckley came to Buck Creek to watch the documentary. If you don't know who they are, they're the people behind the NCI, National Citizens Inquiry. And they said, something has to happen. It's time. And they believe God as well. About a month later, Teresa calls me up. She says, Jason, something big's happening. But you can't tell anybody yet. Want to rock the boat. Well, on June 6th, the announcement came out. The Allison inquiry. An MP has now stepped forward, Dean Allison, and said we're going to sit down with the vax injured, and that includes people that lost somebody, and listen to their stories. So Canada's now waking up. And something Sean shared with me recently was that the timing couldn't be better. Because it is at this time, a whole bunch of stuff came out in the last year that woke people up. So I think God's hands on that one too. Now, as I finish up here, I want to remind you all, the hard work is still to come. On this October 20th, that's going to be the next phase of it. Regardless of the results, the next phase starts October 20th. If we don't get that referendum, we keep pushing, and we get Mitch Sylvester's on the ballot. Because that one will be binding. It may take some time, but we'll get there. If we do get a good result, we still need to make sure this government's going to do it. Because there's a lot of people that don't believe Premier Danielle Smith would. Now, I'm currently touring with Bruce Party, Dennis Kelma, and Matt Rowley. You guys familiar with those guys? Well, Bruce is the one that keeps reminding us that at one point we're going to have to put the football into the hand of the government. And you need to trust that government or not in order to carry it across the finish line. So last night in Red Deer, we were doing a public input, asking the audience to let us know what they think, questions, comments, concerns, outbursts, all that good stuff. And there was a common theme. What happens after? If we get there, what happens after? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that with you because your next speaker is Bruce Party. All the way from Ontario, we dragged him out here to be part of Alberta Day. And he's been donating his blood as well. Where is he? There he is. We like to call him Cold Water Bruce because he tells you the truth, just the way it is. Some of it's going to be hard to hear, but at least we can be prepared to do it. And then we're also going to be in Calgary on Thursday, continuing up this tour. So if you're in Calgary, come and join us. But without further ado, let's bring that interloper from Ontario up. Mr. Do you go by doctor? No, Mr. Party. Thank you. Oh. Got an announcement?